We know Beth is a sucker for a great acronym. Today, Gabz, Beth, and I share our favorite ones that we consistently teach to the teams we are on. Today is the acronym episode.
Welcome to Camp Code, a podcast brought to you by Go Camp Pro. We have created and are dedicated to this podcast because we believe that staff training is one of, if not the most important part of your job as a camp director. Staff training is what prepares your staff to care for their kids, to feel confident in their skills, to do their jobs to the best of their ability, and to learn along the way. A well thought out and intentional staff training will help you in more ways than you can imagine. And we need to help each other bring our very best. Welcome to our episode, and let's begin with sharing who we are. Ruby.
I'm Ruby Compton. I'm the Chief Exploration Officer of Ruby Outdoors and a friend and trainer to camps all across the world. And my home base is in Western North Carolina in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Thanks, Ruby. Gabz.
And my name is Gabrielle Raill. I'm one of the camp directors of Camp Woro. Camp Woro is an all-girls camp, and we're situated in the Laurentian Mountains of Quebec, Canada. And we work on creating a positive community for girls and women.
Thanks, Gab. And I'm Beth Allison. I'm co-owner of Camp Hacker and Go Camp Pro. I was a camp director for many years, but now I have the privilege to serve as a camp consultant. And my true focus is intentional leadership training. So this was likely the hardest episode for me personally to prepare for. Ruby, in all of her wisdom, decided we would choose our top 3 acronyms or mnemonics to share with you today. And as she's a wee bit younger than I am not sure she truly understood that I began directing and therefore creating acronyms and other ways for my staff to remember things over 25 years ago. So trying to narrow those down to 3 was downright impossible for me, but I have done my best. Acronyms are a great way for folks to remember things they need to learn and then to be able to recall them flawlessly in times of stress or worry or need. They're also, for me, a great way to add to the lexicon of your camp to make you unique and to help your people understand what's important to you and your purpose. So here we go. And if you want all my others from the last 26 years, as Gab says often, you're going to have to wait for the book to come out. So Ruby, as you chose this great topic, let's start off with you.
All right, so my number one acronym that is such a game changer is my acronym for conflict resolution. And for a long time, I taught VOMP, and I'm not even going to tell you what that is because I'm moving away from it. That's one that's been in the outdoor education, adventure education field for a while. But in the last couple of years, I was introduced to nonviolent communication, that whole system from Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. And so his 4 steps, it's not a really pretty acronym, but I don't know if you watch The Handmaid's Tale, it's easy to remember. It's OFNR, O-F-N-R. And it's the words are observations, feelings, needs, requests. And so the way I teach this to folks that I'm doing conflict resolution with is I share with them about how, conflict is awkward. A lot of us avoid it. And a lot of times we avoid it because we don't know how to handle it and don't know how to sit in those feelings. And so I'm going to give you a roadmap for how that conversation can go. And what I love about this system is that it can work for so many different types of conversations, be that like, I have something on my mind that you're doing that's frustrating me and I want to talk to you about it, or you're doing this thing and you probably don't know it, but I don't want to lose our friendship, right? So this is great not only in a professional setting, but I use this all the time in my personal life as well. So here is a quick breakdown. So O is observations. So just stating simply what's going on here. I like to use the example, the staff lounge is a mess, right? So instead of being like, you're a dirty slob, no, I say, making an observation, it's pretty objective. The staff lounge is a mess. Feelings is the F. So that's where you use those I think, I feel statements that we as camp people are very adept at using. So I think that we need to spend a little time cleaning the staff lounge, or I think that folks may not be taking personal responsibility and cleaning up after themselves. That's what I'm feeling like is happening here. Okay, so observations, feelings. N is needs. And so this is where we're asking the question and trying to answer the question, what do we need here? So for instance, with the staff lounge example, I think about one of the reasons that staff lounges get gross is because there's just not designated time to clean it, right? The time that it gets cleaned is at the end of the session. And nobody wants to do that in their free time because they're a place to hang out, right? So no one wants to clean. So we need to build some time into our schedule each day or at the end of your break period or whatever to clean the staff lounge, right? So then R is requests. And that is where, now that we've gone through our observations, we've shared those, and we even want to do some good techniques of I share my observations, you repeat those back to me, you share your observations, I repeat them back to you, I share my feelings, you know, we do that whole exchange, we share needs. And then we get to the last part, which is making a request. And in other conflict resolution systems, a lot of times this is like where you make a plan. And so that, yeah, that's happening here too. But what I really love is the opt-in feature of making a request. You're asking for the folks that are having this conversation, like, can you do this? Is this something you're willing to do? Which I think is really important. It's not just saying, all right, gung ho, we're all going forward with this thing. Like we are actually putting it in the framework of, I'm making a request of you. Is that something you can do? What requests do you have of me? And it's a really nice exchange. So O, F, and R, observations, feelings, needs, requests. And if you want to read more about that, there's a great book by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg called something, nonviolent communication. If you Google those words, you will find his stuff.
Thanks, Ruby. Great way to start us off. All right, Gabz, what have you got?
One of my favorites is SAS. So SAS is something that we teach our staff members about with camper behavior management. And sometimes, you know, you want obviously your staff members to approach your kids kindly. You want them to be rational. You know, there's all of these things and needs that we want. But what about an emergency situation? And how do you explain to staff members how to adjust their behavior according to the different situations? So SAS stands for stop what you're doing, approach appropriately, and speak kindly. And that's for every single situation or scenario at camp. So stop what you're doing is straight from Michael Brandwein. When you're addressing behavior, you don't want to keep doing what you're doing and sort of just talk over your shoulder and say, hey kid, can you X, Y, and Z? No, you stop and then you approach appropriately. So if there's two kids that are speaking, let's just say during an activity when a counselor is giving instructions and there's two kids that are speaking, you don't want to embarrass them, but so you might want to approach appropriately in sort of a calm and not draw attention, quiet way, and sort of sit beside them or stand beside them. So they'll feel their presence instead of rushing towards them, and then they might, be embarrassed, or it's an unnecessary approach. But if there's an emergency, you would want to move very, very quickly. So stop what you're doing, approach appropriately, and then speak kindly. So no matter what the scenario, you're being respectful to the child or to the other staff member. And for me, this has really, really helped in also after behavior management is done by staff members, when we are providing feedback to that staff member, we can go over SAS and see like what were the steps that were taken and was there anything that they could have done differently or better. So so for me, it's simple, it's easy, and my staff loves saying like, I really sassed that kid, or you sassed that kid, meaning you're respectful, and hopefully it's also didn't draw attention to that child from other campers.
Thanks, Gab. And you can see the great use of acronyms, and often they come about in a way to solve a problem. So in a way
Right.
to create framework, in a way to help people remember. There are lots of other uses for them too. And so what I want to talk about, well, I guess it's the same thing. I did see a need and tried to come up with a framework, but it was a much bigger project. So I was asked to create a program for a week of teen camp programming that I did a few years back. And the directors and the staff were trying to find a way to help campers have great discussions on important topics, to learn the value and joy of treating each other with kindness, and to make really good decisions all on their own. So I had 5 full days plus half days on either end to work with these teens, and they were 13 to 16 years old. And I developed a 5-word acronym that could help campers and staff focus their efforts on becoming the person that they wanted to be. So the acronym is STAND. And each day it was filled with an hour's worth of activities that we all did together as a whole camp, first thing after breakfast. So there were small group discussions, adventure programming activities, games, songs, PowerPoint presentations, the whole gamut. And they did many of the activities in their cabin groups, but we also purposely combined them with new cabin groups each day to get to know more people better. And it was truthfully one of the most impactful weeks I've ever had as a camp professional, as I saw firsthand the intelligence and the willingness and the determination of this group of campers to make the world a better place for everyone. And all the lessons of the day were reinforced throughout the daily schedule with songs, with fun announcements, with scripture, with vespers at the end of campfire, all those things to tie it all together. So many of those campers went on to become LITs and staff, and some of them are still on staff today. So STAND stands for, S is social graces, if you please. So that's where we worked on holding open doors or introducing ourselves, shaking hands with everybody at the lunch table every single day, which was really awkward on days 1 and 2, but got much better as things went on. We talked about welcoming folks into a group when they arrived on a scene and you were already in discussion. We talked about cell phone etiquette for when they went home, all these kinds of things. T is take responsibility for your own actions. So we discussed what it would look like when folks didn't do this and what the world could look like if we all did. And they had some great responses for that. Our day of A was Ask Intelligent Questions, where we discussed not taking everything we hear and read at face value, but rather questioning and looking up sources and doing our research and helping us to affirm our beliefs. And never miss an opportunity to be kind, which we practiced not only in that hour, but throughout that entire day. And it was one of my favorite days at camp ever. And D is do all things with integrity, where we discussed what that means and how hard that can be and how we can lean on one another for support. We concluded the week with an online live program where campers not only shared their gifts and talents, like in a coffee house, but they also explained between acts what the STAND program meant to them and how it helped them grow. They were a remarkable group of people who made me very proud. And to this day, some of them still send messages about how they live their lives now, knowing what they stand for. So don't just let acronyms be limited to immediate needs of a camp. They can be for everything. One of the reasons I'm such a big fan. And now, before we move on to round 2, we have an ad from one of our sponsors.
Hey listeners, today I want to share with you briefly about a free service that Go Camp Pro offers. Sometimes it can feel like there is too much to read and too little time, especially when trying to stay up to date on what is going on in our ever-changing world. Simply put, there's not enough time to read it all. And I hate feeling like I'm going to miss out on smart ideas from thought leaders in the industry. To help with information overload, a volunteer editorial board at Go Camp Pro scans the best of what is shared in the COVID-19 and Camp Slack, the Summer Camp Professionals group, and a variety of resources shared from anywhere from the local to the international level. This info is gathered into an easy-to-read newsletter called The Brief. Each newsletter contains a short summary of the current top 5 COVID-19 stories, and content is highly curated to reveal its relevancy to the summer camp industry. Find links to upcoming webinars, podcasts, articles to share with families and staff, monthly reflections, and updated guidance from experts around the world, all in the brief. You can sign up to receive the brief at the link in our show notes.
And we're back, and we're going to go back to Ruby for her second acronym of the show.
This is an acronym for you, camp directors, and also maybe to share with your leadership team members. I, over the last couple of years, have been doing a lot of workshops about delegation, that is teaching workshops about delegation, how to do it better. And if that's something you want to hear more about, be in touch. I'm happy to go over some of that with you. But I want to give you the first half of the acronym that I always give when I think through anytime I'm delegating a task. So anytime I'm letting go of something, and I don't like for people to think about delegating as letting go, but more about you're managing it a little bit differently. And so these are the 4 things we need to say every single time we delegate a task. And so the acronym is Ozap, O-Z-A-P. I know, catchy, right? But mine are not as good as Beth's. I'm still learning. But, so Ozap. So the first thing that we want to share anytime that we are delegating something is to share the objective. So what is it that we're trying to accomplish? I'm going to go back to the staff lounge. So the objective is that we need to clean the staff lounge, and we have 20 minutes to do it because the health inspector's on the way. All right. So that objective, clearly state what is the goal. Z is zoom out. We need to pull back and take a quick look at where does this fit into the big picture. We need to clean it because the last time we had 7 points taken off just within the staff lounge, and we cannot have that happen again. So take a step back and give them some context. All right. So objective, zoom out. A is authority. So what can this person do, and kind of what is the box that they are operating within, right? So yes, we need to use the cleaners that are available in the shed. We need to, if you need to move furniture around, so you can make sure you can get underneath and sweep and vacuum in all the places we never do. You have the authority to move stuff around in there if you need to. And if something's really gross, just take it out and go put it in my office. So that way they won't see it, right? Whatever it is, but give them the box, like this is the box you have to work within. So they're not thinking like, oh, well, are we supposed to bleach every surface, or is this just like kind of like a sweep and vacuum, right? Okay, so what are we allowed to and what are we not allowed to do? And then the P is priority. What is the priority level of this? And this is where you, as the person who is delegating, you are saying, this is where this falls on my priority list. And then we're checking in with the people we're assigning it to. Where does it fall on your priority list? If we have a mismatch, we may need to assign that to someone else, right? So if you say, this is top priority, we have 20 minutes to do it, and you have somebody looking at you that says, yeah, but my kid just wet the bed, like I need to go take care of those sheets, then yeah, totally, you need to go take care of those sheets. But yeah, if you have staff standing around like, yeah, I don't have anything else to do. Yeah, absolutely. It's top priority for them. So objective, state what needs to get done, zoom out, give them some context. A, authority, tell them what is the box that they're working within. And P, what priority level is it? That's how we more effectively delegate and give the information that's needed.
I love that one, Ruby. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. That gets me excited. All right. Gabz, what's your next one?
My next one is called Warp, and this is specifically for returning staff members to role model the type of behavior we want our young and new staff members to embody, basically. So my theory is that returning staff members, hopefully, if you're hiring them back, have some skill sets that are above and beyond our new staff members and our younger staff members. And because of that, they might, for example, in the morning before coming to a staff meeting or coming to breakfast, they might wake up last minute. And they wake up last minute because they have all of their stuff ready to go. They are feeling confident so they don't get overwhelmed by their morning routine, and they can get up and look ready for the first session. But what I want is for young staff members and new staff members to get up at a timely time, to give them enough time to get ready for the day, et cetera, et cetera. So our returning staff members, I feel, can slack a little bit during staff training because they're so comfortable. And they should be, because they've probably been coming to your camp for a while and they feel good and confident about being camp counselors. But we want to channel that energy and give them purpose that they need to role model for the rest of the staff. So I run a session called Warp, which stands for Welcome, Observe, Role Model, and Problem Solve. And the goal is that returning staff members during those off times, they're using Warp to role model the type of behavior we want for our campers and for each other. So for example, off times, I mean, during session times, in my experience, returning staff members are quite good during session times. But when you're walking from point A to point B after a session, they also can tend to clump together with, returning staff members, et cetera. So you want to always be welcoming as a returning staff member. So look up and around when you're going from one session to another or to a break, and how can you involve somebody new within your circle? Observe is to look at the behavior of the rest of the staff. So if you're seeing that there's somebody that's looks like maybe they feel left out, that they approach them and say, hey, do you want to join the group? Or maybe there's a bunch of 17-year-olds and they're clumping. And as a 19-year-old, you go into that group and sort of break it up a bit and say, why don't you come over here? Why don't you go over there for these activities? Role model is just like what I talked about. Yes, maybe one of these staff members can get up early not too early in the morning and be ready for their first session, but you want them to get up earlier to role model to the rest of the staff members. This is the type of what we expect during the summer from our staff. And then problem solve. A lot of returning staff members, because they're so skilled, are also really eager to showcase all of the knowledge that they have. But I don't want them to showcase. I want them to help other staff members to come up with their own solutions. So before giving an answer, ask other staff members, well, what would you do in this scenario? How would you, deal with a homesick camper? And if the new staff member is having a hard time answering, then the returning staff member can give their expertise. So it's really to give returning staff members an added responsibility during staff training, which is train the staff during the time that there's non-trainings that are happening on camp, that we need this behavior to be role modeled. And this is how we're going to create a stronger staff for the rest of the summer.
So brilliant. Love, love, love. And a great way for staff to remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to start my second one off by thanking all of you for being part of this industry. There are a whole lot of other things that you could have chosen to do with your career. No doubt some or most of them with better hours and better pay, but you chose camp, and that says a lot about you. As a camping professional, it says that you care about making a difference, that you want to give of yourselves to make sure that every camper who arrives at your camp feels significant and important. And it says that you want to help your campers and each other become your very best selves. And that makes you extraordinary. And extraordinary leaders live on the edge. So they equip one another and all those around them to experience more than they ever dreamed. They dare to be different, and they don't just blindly follow the status quo. They go above and beyond, always stretching and pushing themselves to new limits, and they envision the future. So they see the big picture and they help other people become their best possible selves. They live on the edge. And this EDGE acronym led into a discussion on how we as staff can offer the very best of ourselves to our people. And it was a formula for each of us to reflect upon weekly. So we would take some time at our staff meetings to decide how we'd lived on the edge that week, and to determine if we were doing so and what we needed to maybe change or tweak for the week coming in, which then led to the second acronym. So I'm sneaking an extra one in here. But as staff, we would all like to be heroes to our people. And a hero, of course, is somebody who equips him or herself and all those around, who dares to be different, who goes above and beyond, and who envisioned the future. But we also talked about how anyone can be somebody's hero as long as you are intentional about it. So we created the 4-step hero process. So to be a hero, you must have, H is have everything you need. E is engage the camper or the staff person, particularly if you're in a supervisory role. R is read all the signs. And O is offer a memory or a teachable moment. So here's an example how you could use this formula for a camp counselor if you were at a sleepaway camp, and if it were like my camp, your washrooms are not in the cabin. So here's how to use the hero formula if a camper wakes you up in the middle of the night to go pee. So H, do you have everything you need? So you've got your flashlight. If not for you, then for your camper. You have proper footwear. You're alert, even though they've just woken you from a deep and much needed sleep. You have called out in a whisper to see if anybody else in the cabin needs to go. And of course, you've woken that one camper you know who should go just in case. So that's have everything you need. E, you engage the camper. So you on your walk can talk about the stars or the constellations, or maybe ask if they can hear the spring peepers, or maybe you talk about the vastness of the universe, but you're engaging that camper. R, you're reading all the signs. So is the child scared? Are they afraid of the dark? Are they missing home? Are they fitting in at camp? Are they excited about having some secret alone time with you? Are they enjoying their time at camp? And then O, offering a memory or a teachable moment. So you can thank the camper for keeping a promise, waking you up when they needed to go, as you made all your campers promise you on the first night of camp. Maybe you can teach your camper a song about the stars, or how you could teach them how crickets make noise, or you sing a song with them because you knew they were a little bit afraid of the dark. So as a hero, you have everything you need, which means you're equipping yourself and those around you to succeed. You are engaging, so you're connecting and daring to be different. You're reading all the signs, so you're understanding and going above and beyond. And you're offering that memory or teachable moment, which envisions the future, helping campers or staff to see what could be. So the second acronym helped our staff to know the 4 steps that they can follow in any situation with a camper or a staff that they supervise, be it big or small. So with the formula, which I had put on stickers for them because we all love stickers, they practiced several times throughout training in small groups with different scenarios and figured out how best to be a hero and live on the edge. And the HERO acronym was one that staff remembered and then could use in any situation with a camper when they just weren't sure where to start or what to do. So it gave them some time to think it through and process those 4 steps. So we're now going to hear one more round from each of us before we head to our very famous Gabrielle recap.
Before we do that, we have to do a rousing round of "I could be a hero, baby." You guys sang that, right? You had to.
Absolutely.
We did, actually.
Good. Good.
I believe Chantel Jackson even created a dance to that particular song.
I'm
Love it.
sure. I'm
Yeah.
Did you do "Stand in the Place Where You Do"? If I don't sing all the lyrics, we don't own royalties, right? Yeah, something like that. Okay, great. Music is important too. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, my last one is the word trauma. TRAUMA, trauma. And this is an acronym for, it's similar to Offner. It could be used in some situations, but I specifically teach this one when talking about not necessarily traumatic things, but trauma could be coming up, but just like big stuff, sensitive issues. I think about a camper comes to you and comes out to you, or a camper comes to you and asks you a question about, the typical like, oh, we don't talk about that at camp, those sort of things. And so this is how we can steer that conversation. Again, it's a roadmap. So these are the steps to take. So the T in trauma is their work. It's their work. So instead of you may be triggered or upset or have some feelings come up. It can be any range there when somebody comes to you and discloses that they're coming out, or that they have questions about drugs or whatever it might be, right? So just to recognize that your response is not what we're talking about here, and you need to separate out, and this is their work to do. It's their work. And if it's a situation where you really are not capable of being the adult and being the confidant in that situation for whatever reason, that's okay. And it's okay to say, I really appreciate that you brought this up to me. I'm not the appropriate person to have this conversation with, but let's find someone who can. And that's totally fine. And I think very often our staff are thrown into situations and they've never been given the permission to opt out. And it is okay to opt out of some of these conversations. So it's their work. That's the T. The R is rapport. And so anybody who's ever done any like matching and mirroring training, the idea is that we want to get on their level, match their tone, match their body position. And that creates this simple feeling of trust and connection. It's why we like doing dances like the Macarena or the Cha-Cha Slide. Like there's just something very human in us that when we're all doing the same motion, we feel very connected and it's great. So the same thing happens in conversations where if you will match your body position and kind of mirror that person's body and their volume and their tone and their pace as they speak, they will feel more connected to you. So it's their work, rapport. A is ask questions. The simplest way I can put this is be ruthlessly curious. So someone comes out to you, you can say, wow, thank you for trusting me with this. What made you decide to share that today? Right. And so again, we're kind of turning the spotlight back onto their work. It's not about my response. It's about, let's find out what's going on with you right now. I had a staff member once who did a training on this sort of stuff, and he talked about like, turn on your scientist brain and just get really, really curious. See how much information you can get from that person, and really try to get that complete picture. I think about too, when I've done wilderness medicine, like we ask a lot of questions when you're evaluating a patient, getting kind of this like full patient assessment. So questions are really, really powerful. And I encourage you to have them kind of be the default. We're hearing what they're saying and responding with more questions to help explore whatever is this topic that they've brought up to you. The you, this is a stretch, is you listen. So stop talking. We talk too much, right? So you can ask questions, but mostly just be quiet and listen to what they have to say. Again, it's their work, so we need to let them do the talking. M is mention help. So ask, how can I help you here? What choices do you have here? Bringing up that there can be other resources brought forward. It doesn't mean I'm saying like, do you need help necessarily? They may not, but things like, are there other people that, we want to share this information with? Are there ways I can help and support you as you feel more comfortable here at camp? How can I help? Right. So bringing up your ability to help as well as what other resources are available. And the A is ask what's next. Thanks, Beth. Hat tip to the West Wing. But I think often we find ourselves in these kind of intense conversations and we don't know how to get out of them. And I think, be in it. Be in that space, be present, talk about stuff, get curious, listen, mention help, and then start to push forward to like, well, what do we do from here? Where do we go from here? What's next? And that can be the door opening to like, I'd like to keep talking about this. Or, can we put a pause on this, but I want to check in later. Or I really need help taking this next step. I told you this because I want to tell somebody else and I didn't know how to do it, right? So if you're having trouble getting out of that conversation, I find that what's next question can be really helpful. So just to review, it's their work, rapport, ask questions, you, just the letter U, listen, mention help, and ask what's next.
Love it. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant stuff. All right, Gab. I'd say this is your last one, but we have one more from you later.
So for me, it's the acronym ASK. And this is really to help staff members on first impression days. So that most likely will be the day where they're meeting parents and or campers. But maybe they're a returning staff member and they're meeting a new staff member for the first time. I am awkward during first encounters. My mind goes really, really blank. And I remember cleaning out my backyard with my landlord, and it was sort of almost like a team building activity because we were like chopping things down, and it was us getting to know each other. And he had asked me what my zodiac sign was, and so I told him. And then half an hour later, I thought, oh, I should have asked him what his zodiac sign is, because we would work in silence outside. And so I'm awkward during those first encounters. So to help out those awkward staff members that don't know what to say, maybe to a new family when they're walking from point A to point B, use the acronym ASK. So ASK stands for, first, ask something specific. So ask about not just how was your car ride, but was there any, good songs that came on the radio, or did you stop at somewhere neat that ate good food, like whatever, something specific. I told you I was awkward. Show them something is number 2. So as you're walking around camp, you can show them a new building or a famous point where everybody likes to like hang out. So show them something. And then K is, did you know? So tell them something new. So did you know this evening it's a pizza night? Or did you know that these 2 staff members have come back because they want to do a great job in programming, whatever. So, and then just repeat. So ask them something specific, show them something, and then did you know? And that's what I use in even at parties. I'm like, oh, did you know that there is some fancy eggs over here. You know, keep it keep it going, keep the conversation going. For those awkward walks, use the acronym ASK.
And if anytime you want to point out fancy eggs to me, I'm in. Sounds delicious. All right.
I love it.
One of my very favorite things to do for staff training is to develop that first 2-hour program slot. So it's all about the building of community, making folks feel welcome, and getting them inspired to make that real difference this summer. And one of my all-time favorite ones was called It's About Time. And time is the acronym. And it was a way to divide that 2 hours into 4 sections and to have folks really think about their why, their purpose, their goals, their responsibilities to camp and to one another. It starts, of course, with T, which stands for Tell Your Stories. So it allows opportunities for them to share a bit about themselves with different partners. I really encourage them to spend time getting to know each other that year and that summer by sharing their stories, not just about camp, but about their hopes, their fears, their dreams, their theories, their thoughts, all of those things. Share who you are by telling your story. And of course, it involves you sharing stories about yourself with your staff as well, and being vulnerable and giving them an opportunity to get to know you. I stands for invest in yourself. So in this particular section, they had time to express gratitude and time to dream about how they wanted to make the most of their summer. Time has this way of showing us what really matters. So I wanted them to make sure to do what really mattered that summer and to take the time to do what made their souls happy. M is make time for others. And this section involved them reflecting on the people in their lives who've helped them on their journey and thinking about how they best wanted to spend their time that summer in order to give the most of themselves to others. And E stands for Envision the Ending. I used the song Oliver's Tune by Peter Katz about a great Canadian violinist who was dying of a brain tumor. And he told a reporter that he was okay with dying because he was doing exactly what he wanted to do with the time that he had left. So it's a beautiful song. It's called Oliver's Tune. If you want to listen to it, it's absolutely soul-wrenching, lovely song. But what it was I wanted them to think about the time that they had before them that summer. I wanted them to set some goals. I had some specific formats to help them do that and understand how sacred our time together was and that we needed to hold on to it and make the most of it together. So I will add the entire session to the show notes. It was a very effective time together on a number of levels. But the staff referred back to that acronym all summer long, knowing that it truly is about time. And now, Gabrielle, the famous Waro recap.
Yeah, I'm excited. Well, it's, you know what? So we're talking about acronyms, and it's just a friendly reminder that acronyms are there to help guide staff members in they're sort of anchor points to your mission statement. And there's so much information that we have to learn at camp that having sometimes acronyms can help just simplify things and perhaps push these acronyms a little bit further, create posters, put it up on, in your buses, put them up in your bathroom stalls, make it part of your everyday and not just this one session type situation where you say the acronym and then people forget about it. How can you stretch this acronym out and how can you make it something that becomes part of your staff members' vocabulary and that they're even able to cite what the acronym stands for. So for today, I've categorized our acronyms into 3 different categories: leadership, development, and other. So we'll start with leadership. If you're interested in different leadership acronyms, here they are. For empathy, leadership, check out trauma. That was Ruby's. For delegation leadership, we have Ozap. And then also we have support leadership, hero, and then peer leadership, warp. And if you're looking at a little bit of development, we can look at professional development, edge. We can look at community development, time, and look at personal development, stand. And then for other, proactive community change, Offner, which is Ruby's, SAS for behavior management, and helping with first impressions, you can use ask.
So It often must sound to you as you're listening to this podcast like we'd figured all this out ahead of time and put these categories together for you. And I want you to know we don't do that at all. It's just Gab's brain and how she figures
good.
out how that all goes together. So thanks, Gab. We appreciate it all as always.
Thanks.
All right. And before we wrap up with our best practice, which is also from Gabs this week, here is how you can connect with us and get involved in the conversation. You can join us by using the very famous hashtag Camp Code and let us know the topics you'd like us to discuss, any guests you recommend that we talk to, and great leadership training tips that you have to share. And we would love to hear from you because we're all about sharing in this industry. If you have found this podcast to be useful, please leave us a rating and review for us in your podcasting app. Your feedback helps keep the show going, and we love our reviewers so much that we're going to be sharing some of the highlights right here. Ruby.
We have a new review, you guys. So today's review comes from NT of Harbor Camps. And they said, really enjoy listening to all the Camp Hacker podcasts. The women of Camp Code give great inspiration, ideas, and talk about things in a thoughtful way. Helpful professional development to think about the issues they bring up, even if we all have different ideas and takes. Thanks, NT. We appreciate you. Send me an email, ruby@gocamp.pro, and I'll get a thank you gift for leaving a rating and review. Sent, that's right, in real live mail to you. So I hope we'll hear from you soon. Back to you, Beth.
Thanks, Ruby. And here's how you can get in touch with each one of us individually. So Ruby, can you give us a little more than just what you just gave us, please?
Yeah. So in general, if you want to be in touch, ruby@rubyoutdoors.com. You can also find me, ruby@gocamp.pro. You can find me on Instagram @rubyoutdoors, where I like to post stories about what I do when I'm quarantining, like how many salads I've eaten and workouts I've done, which is usually not very many. Games of Among Us I have or have not won. So check that out. And then you can also find me on Twitter @rubylyn85.
Thanks, Ruby. Gab, how can they get in touch with you?
You can follow me on Instagram @Gabrielle Raill. Raill takes 2 L's. And you can get in touch with me via info@waro.com. My good friend Edixon, who takes care of that email, will make sure that I get back to you.
Thanks, Gab. You can find me on Twitter @Topaz. I'm on Instagram @Topaz_Faye. And you can email me directly at beth@gocamp.pro. And Ruby, what are we talking about next time?
Next podcast, we're going to be talking about teaching staff to talk to parents.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can work some more acronyms into that one.
Yes, I'm sure you can.
All right. Our final segment on each podcast is, of course, our best practice for leadership training. And again, we would love to hear some of your memorable moments or your most effective tips. And you can tell us that using the hashtag Camp Code. And this week's best practice comes from Gabrielle.
Often returning staff members, when they come onto camp during staff training, they are still holding on to last year. They're holding on to last year's memories, friendships, programs, campers. It was a good year, even though perhaps during that summer they might have complained to you a couple of times. All they can remember now are the good times, and they were the best times, and nobody could compare to the year before. So for me, this week, our best practice is help staff members put last year to rest so they can make space for this year and all the wonderful things that are to come. And we first need to do that by validating their experience from last year. So perhaps host a little gathering with your returning staff members while new staff members are learning something such as the names of the buildings on your site. Have a little space for your returning staff members and say thank you to them for what they did last year, and have a conversation about what are some of the things that we did last year that we want to make sure happens again this year, and what behaviors do we all need to embody so that we can make sure that that can happen. And then perhaps build on that and say, what would we like to see happen more or change this year? And what can we do, and what power do we have individually and as a community to help pass on that message to our new and returning staff members? You can do a tree planting ceremonies. You can have a little mini buffet and, do it, food styles, except obviously buffets probably right now is not going to work out, but the way you're going to figure out your food situation at your camp. Either way, make sure that it's a celebration paired with what's next, and help them say goodbye to the last year and welcome to this year.
Great. Thanks, Gab. And that wraps all things up for today. So thank you so much to my wonderful co-hosts. Camp Code is part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network. Check out all our other podcasts at gocamp.pro/podcasts. Stay tuned for our next episode. And from all of us here at Camp Code, thanks for the listening, friends.